And so we're focusing on safely and securely, in the right context, deploying out our structured data into those ecosystems so our clients can take advantage of the arms race that's happening right now, right? And you talked about like GPT, 4. I don't think GPT 3.5 actually had context, but 4 did. GPT 5 does, right? And like now my personal GPT 5 knows the last 2 years of my life. It knows everything about me pretty much, right?
And it happened actually without an announcement. It just happens.
Yes.
And you go, anybody who knows it, their eyes light up going, I have, and some of them, I'm sure it went a good couple of weeks before I realized, wait, this is actually asking very intelligent. It's not just prompting me with what I said in that conversation. Welcome to Banking Transformed, the top podcast in retail banking. I'm your host, Jim Roos. What if your business banking clients could ask a question in plain English and get an instant, intelligent answer? No spreadsheets, no manual reports, just the client, their data, and AI working together. That may sound like science fiction, but it's happening right now. Grasshopper Bank has become the first U.S. bank to enable customers to connect their business banking data directly to Anthropic's Claude AI assistant. And the implications are truly staggering. Today, we're joined by the visionaries who made this happen: Chris Tremont, the Chief Digital Officer, and Pete Chapman, the CTO of Grasshopper Bank. They're going to review how they built a secure bridge between banking and artificial intelligence, why they raced to be first, and what this means for every business owner in America and actually every financial institution. This is a conversation where the future of banking actually gets written live. The companies that understand this shift will thrive, while those who don't will certainly be left behind. So Chris and Pete, before we start, can you introduce yourselves to our audience a little bit? Chris?
Sure. Hey, I'll go first. Yeah. Jim, thanks for having us on. I think first and foremost, excited to have the conversation. You used the term visionary kind of in your introduction there. That's a very strong term when you think about it, guys like Chris and I, but we'll do our best to kind of live up to that, and looking forward to the conversation. So I'm the CTO here at Grasshopper Bank. I've been in financial services for the entirety of my career, which is coming up 25 years or so at this point. And I've spent my career kind of on both sides of the fence, working for fintechs, working for banks as well. And so I've gotten to see, the space kind of from both sides, which has been interesting for me. So here as the CTO at Grasshopper, I work closely with, my colleague Chris and others ultimately to deliver the technology architecture and platforms to enable the business. And there's a lot that goes into that. I've got a great team that I work with that are way smarter than me on all of this stuff. But it's been fun. It's been a good ride. And I've been here for about 4.5 years or so. Chris, over to you.
Thanks, Pete and Jim. Thanks for having us. I'm Chris Tremont, Chief Digital Officer for Grasshopper Bank. Much like Pete, I've spent all 20 years or so of my career in financial services working for a larger regional bank and then 12 or 13 years with a smaller bank up in Boston. Pete and I worked together with a company called Radius that we kind of digitized and eventually sold to Lending Club in 2021. And then a number of us kind of, quote unquote, we got the band back together and joined Grasshopper in 2021. And small company. So like Pete, we wear a few hats, both him and I. My primary remit is sort of on the business side, leading our direct business banking efforts to small and mid-sized companies, our indirect fintech sponsor banking or banking as a service efforts, and then some affinity banking that we do through a partnership with the Auto Club Trust and AAA. And then product and marketing report up to me as well. So we're looking forward to the conversation.
So this is kind of interesting. So we really have a group that has banking background, but also fintech background, and is taking innovation to a new level at like a fun sandbox for both of you. So can you walk us through what led Grasshopper Bank to become, as I said, the first U.S. bank to integrate Claude AI or a LLM for customer banking data analysis? And What was the aha moment that spurred that initiative and actually had you do it? Because we have a lot of people talking about it in the industry, but man, you can count on less than one hand how many people are actually doing anything that is customer facing. So what got you to this point?
Yeah, maybe I'll take a stab at that question here. And I think to answer that question, you got to kind of go back a little bit and think about how we've jumped into AI over the last year and a half or 2 years. And so we've been at it for the better part of 2 years, really, and trying to understand how could a bank like us leverage AI, I think first and foremost to drive probably what we would call internal back office efficiencies. And then how could we eventually get to know this technology and over time, develop some sort of externally facing roadmap that leverage this to create a better digital banking experience, right? For lack of a better term there. And so we've been doing that for 2 years, and the focus, like I just said, has been mostly on back office efficiency. And we found a couple of things. There have been a lot of lessons learned, kind of as we've deployed that. And I think as we stepped into it, first and foremost, the thing we said to ourselves is there's a lot of concern out there. Is AI going to take my job, right? Like you hear it everywhere. Everyone's talking about that. And that's not what we're trying to do with AI, right? Like we have the luxury of being a relatively young, quickly growing and scaling company with a really sharp team of people. And so, we're not trying to necessarily go in and replace 25% of our employees like a lot of big companies are, right? Like we're more trying to make our crack team far more capable. So as this bank continues to grow, maybe we don't have to kind of leverage, more hiring the way a traditional bank would, right? And so there's kind of that component. And we deliver that message kind of front and center as we talked with our staff about, hey, we want to start learning AI, right? So we wanted to make sure we disarm people right away from thinking, I'm going to lose my job. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to make you more efficient. We're trying to have you live up here. We're trying to have you, get out of the repetitive tasks that are down here. And ultimately, we think this will be a good thing for our business as this bank grows, right? And so we've been on that kind of journey for a year and a half, 2 years or so. We kind of, set the expectation front and center culturally. That's how we're going to go about it. We're a big Google shop, so we've gone kind of deep down the rabbit hole with Google, Gemini, and we've got that kind of embedded deeply kind of across our entire infrastructure and ecosystem. And we said to ourselves this year, especially, hey, what if we could give the typical knowledge worker 1 to 2 business days back by the end of the year, right? Free them up to be able to once again operate up here a little bit more instead of doing the repetitive tasks. And we've made a lot of progress in that, a lot of progress. In fact, we've blown by a lot of our expectations that we had at the beginning of this year and certainly in the last year as well. And so this has allowed us, I think, to really understand artificial intelligence as a technology, how to engage with it, what works, what does not work, et cetera. And all along the way, we kind of said to ourselves, okay, once again, once we're good at this stuff or once we get better at this stuff and better understand it, let's find a way to make sure we can deploy this thing out to our customers, right? So there have been a bunch of aha moments as we've thought about the internal deployment of AI. But stepping back and thinking more specifically about the MCP server itself, there are a number of us that, we call ourselves maybe AI native, whatever that means right now. But personally, in my life, and I have my consumer banking account with a separate bank because Grasshopper doesn't, offer direct consumer accounts. But I've got my finances elsewhere. I have been a PFM nerd for the better part of 20 years. And I've always said, hey, look, there's something here about, hey, we've got all this data. We've got to find a way, as a financial institution to be able to kind of advise our clients a little bit better in a really proactive way. So I've tried every PFM under the sun. But I have taken personally my banking data, my PFM data, and for a year and a half now, I've been dumping it into my, Chat GPT, right? That's what I use personally in my life. And that thing has really been able to engage with me and help me better understand my finances, better understand my cash flow, better plan my investments, et cetera, in a way that the old school PFM tools just have never been able to do, right? And I'm doing all that in a super inefficient way where I take a CSV file and I anonymize it to some extent and I dump it into the LLM, right? And so as I'm doing that, and there are others at the bank that have been doing that exact same thing as well, we just said to ourselves, guys, like there's got to be some way over time to simply, standardize and secure our data and plug this thing into some of the LLM providers. And Jim, if you think about that right there, like that's the thing that we as banks have been doing forever with QuickBooks, right? Like with, all of these different third-party integrations that we've enabled. So it's very similar to that. But, we just said to ourselves, as soon as there's some LLMs out there that start to standardize around some sort of format, let's find a way to safely, securely, build around that format and start to enable kind of these third-party connections. And so, MCP has thankfully come out, and like a couple of the big shops have said, we're going to use this thing. And so it was the right time and the right place for us to go about something like that. So, anyways, I'm not sure if I got to your question specifically, but that's a little bit about the background there and what's kind of led us to this point.
It's God, there's so much to unravel there. Number one, we have done a great job of, as you said, the ability to give knowledge to customers has been there, but we do it almost like a report. There's not a so what to that. And basically, your history, I'm familiar with it. That has been my challenge to a lot of these organizations that do a great job putting data into nice formats is go further, because most financial institutions have a hard time taking that to the next level and going, I'm going to provide you the so what. Either I'm going to provide you how I'll market to you based on what I learn, or I'm going to give you access to the knowledge, but give you the tools to find out what you should do with that. And I think the big leap here, especially with LLMs, is the ability to go that next, I can feed you all the data. I can tell you what your cash flow is going to be. I can find out recommendations based on what's happened in the past, but deeper than that, I can build that so what through time and through the question and answer part of it. So Chris, when you mentioned in the dialogue, and for those who may not be familiar with Model Context Protocol, can you explain a little bit about what that server is and how it acts as a secure link, but how it really makes it so that this integration of data with an AI tool outward to the customer can be done better that way, where it would not have been able to be done before?
Yeah. Maybe I'll take a shot at that. So the MCP server, Model Context Protocol, right? Like simply a standardized format that I think was initially introduced maybe by Anthropic, who, does Claude, and a couple of the others have slowly kind of said, fine, we'll start to support this format as well, right? Like no one wants to support, they're all in, competition with each other. Right. But thankfully, they're all starting to kind of like standardize around this a little bit. And so I think at this point, you got OpenAI, who's done some standardization around it. You've got, and in turn, Microsoft, who started to do some standardization around it. And I think Google's eventually getting there, and we'll see kind of like what XAI does, right? But like that's hitting on most of the big ones right there. And so this thing, it may sound complex, but all this thing is, the way we look at this thing is the same way we look at, honestly, at API banking, right? Like, which is something we've been doing for a long time. MCP is simply a format, right? And you got to still kind of approach MCP with the same exact kind of InfoSec approach as you would, any API, right? So you got to look at this thing, you got to harden it appropriately, you got to kind of think about least possible permissions, you got to kind of go up and down with it and make sure you do the proper pen test, vulnerability assessments, etc. Right? But like, so MCP, one of the interesting things, Jim, is when we came out with this thing 6 weeks ago or 7 weeks ago or whenever that was, we heard a bunch of reaction from the market. And one of the common questions that came from the industry was, is this thing secure?
Right.
And I would say there is nothing that is inherently insecure or secure about MCP. It's all about standard kind of like DevOps practices that you've got to surround this thing with and deploy it appropriately. And that's been our approach on this thing. And so that's why we would say, like we were cautious as we kind of initially kind of stepped this thing out. But alongside that, like this is a brave new world, right? Like these are uncharted territories here. And so we intentionally have gone out to market with this thing as a private beta initially, right? So just a handful of clients who are clients that are honestly all in the AI space are leveraging it right now. So they understand these things. But the other thing, most importantly, is this is read-only access for now, right? So we're not enabling any sort of write access. And, once you start talking about enabling this thing from a write perspective, boy, that opens up a lot of different things. We'll probably do that at some point. We can talk about that a little bit later. But anyways, at high level, Jim, MCP, I think that the summary there is nothing inherently secure or insecure about this protocol by itself. You've just got to think about deploying this thing in your larger, infrastructure the exact same way you would deploy a new API endpoint or anything along those lines.
So, Chris, obviously you took it from being an internal tool to being something that your customers can actually use. So while it provides the ability for your employees to build a better profile around your business customers, this allows your business customers to leverage a tool based on information at their bank account to better access data in a way that they could have done on their own, but it would have taken a lot more work, as was initially mentioned by Pete around what can be done. What have you seen your customers do with the tool you've given them in the last 6 weeks?
Yeah, well, Jim, we're pretty early on, and I think I'd like to layer into what Pete was talking about, to your earlier question around how we got here. And for us, it always starts with a core value of being client first and aligning to our mission around serving the business and innovation economy. And so the development of AI over time is probably not where Pete and I started in 2021 when we were rebuilding the platform, but it was like, how do we better serve our customers? And this tool has kind of come along, to your point, that we can now put in front of our clients to help them better manage their cash flow, their operations, things like that. And if you look at an SMB, you'd probably say a small business, there's 3 or 4 things that they need in their day-to-day operations. Is they got to get money in, they got to get money out, probably need access to capital from time to time. And when the money's in the bank, help me better manage my cash or my treasury management tools. And so I think this is where Pete and I would say this is where from an AI perspective and this MCP tool really has started to step in and help people build, I don't know, a cash flow statement a little bit, like, give me all my transactions and categorize it in such a way, or a faster way to sort through transactions, build maybe a cash flow statement, do some more analysis, maybe a little bit of a cash burn forecast, things like that. So we're very early on, though, in terms of being able to provide a lot of examples. As Pete said, we look at it kind of akin to API banking, which he and I were probably looking at 6-7 years ago. And you find some learnings along the way of how do you provide a better connection in an interface. And I think we're in a better spot here in 2025 than we were in 2018 or 19 when this stuff was first starting to roll out, at least from our perspective. And it'll be interesting. Maybe we'll come back on in a few months and have a few more learnings for you around how our clients, as we move out of the beta phase of this platform, are really using it. And I do think the next unlock will get past just reading the data to writing as well, transactional based in a safe and sound manner.
Well, and it's interesting because we're even seeing the AI tools evolve to the point where, I've talked about it on a couple of podcasts where ChatGPT now asks follow-up questions around what you're asking it to do, which provides just a whole wealth of opportunity. Especially, I'm a small business customer, and I did not know what I was getting into when I started my small business at all. I mean, there's so many different war stories, but the more we can provide tools to the small business customer around, here's data that you have, here's what you can do with the data based on what normal businesses do, and get them over that whole learning curve. I mean, some organizations, obviously are taking it, as Pete did, taking the data and doing it themselves anyway. But you can provide that bridge, and you provide ways to use the tools that are out there and continually evolve with them, and knowing how, as more and more customers start to use the data in your beta site, you're going to go, oh man, we never thought about this opportunity that was there. And it not only helps the customers, but it helps the people that are assigned to these customers from the organization, from the banking organization. I'm thinking about how much more powerful AI can make the calling officer in meeting with customers and helping them do their business better in the way that's really shows some empathy, but also shows that we're actually partnering with our business clients as opposed to simply seeing them as a revenue source. So, Pete, how did the partnership with NARMI originate, and why was NARMI important to this whole capability?
Yeah, let me answer that question, but just real quick, let me go back to something you said there, because I think it was just fundamentally important to our approach to AI and to how this whole thing is working as well. And ultimately, that conversation we just had there was, okay, I think I might know what I would use this MCP server for. Chris thinks what he might know, he knows what he would use it for. What are our clients going to use it for? Right? Like, and that's the power of this whole thing is you've got these LLMs that are open, right? Like that are extensible, that are so powerful that can do really a lot of different things. And so the use cases that so in a traditional, product development kind of life cycle, right? Like we've got kind of like tight use cases we're looking at, we're going and we're building for. This one's more about opening up and allowing for millions of different use cases, right? And so like what we're going to hear from our clients here, or we have started hearing, but we're going to continue to hear from our clients, use cases we never would have thought about. And we see the same thing in when we deployed internal AI as well. The first thing we did was, well, not the first thing, but one of the first things we did is we said, let's get these tools in the hands of people that are closest to the work and kind of enable them and build some sort of like feedback loop and ask them how they're using it. Right? Like that's going to be way better for us as we think about leveraging AI than me sitting up here being like, well, I wanted to do this or I wanted to do that.
Well,
right? So I think that's just broadly,
it's crowdsourced innovation. I mean,
totally.
It's something we've all wished we could find a way to do, but everything that's being done, you have access to see how people are using it. You're able to, get these people involved. Small businesses, by their own nature, innovative by their skill sets and what they're trying to accomplish. This just becomes very interesting as a way to innovate beyond the organization, which we've all talked about, but very few of us do. We listen, but only deploy so much. And again, that gets back to the beginning of my conversation, is that it's great to be able to provide new ways of looking at data to a customer, be it a business customer, a consumer, a corporate customer. It is much more important to provide them tools to deploy in such a way that the learning curve goes both directions, that you're learning at the same time that they're learning to use it in something that they may not have dipped their toe in initially. So I'm getting back to the NARMI question a little bit about how the whole orchestration happened. I know we're jumping ahead and behind in the sequence of things, but I think it's important for organizations because there's no one out there today that I know that's doing what you're doing on any level. We're all talking about it, and you're deploying it in a context that makes it so it's manageable, but it's also exciting because you kind of know already where some of those landing spots should be. It's just a matter of seeing, does the consumer or the small business agree?
Yeah, absolutely. All well said, Jim. Now back to your question around NARMI, right? Let's talk about kind of like how that came about and like what role do they play. And so NARMI, for those of you, right, who don't know, NARMI is a digital banking provider based out of New York. We've known these guys for a long time. Chris Tremont, in a past life, built out a partnership with them to build out, I think, their first digital banking experience, 7-8 years ago or something along those lines. So these guys have been good partners of ours. We call them design partners, right? And we really believe in what Nikhil and Chris have built over there and kind of where they're going. And so they aren't a vendor for us. They're a strategic partner for us. And so we talk with them about strategic initiatives. They talk with us about strategic initiatives. And typically when they're doing something new, right, like they kind of come, we like to think they come to us, they shoot us a text first saying, hey, are you guys interested in doing something like this? And so this idea had been on, our kind of wall for a little bit, thinking about how do we get this thing deployed eventually. Narmi runs our digital banking ecosystem, right?
Yep.
So online, mobile, in the entirety of the digital. We do some APIs through them as well, right? So look, perfectly logical for them to be the partner that kind of takes this thing, turns it on, and starts to kind of enable it for us. And so I think like they were thinking about it at the same time we were thinking about it. Then we had a conversation around it, and then suddenly about 4 or 5 weeks later, we're out there kind of like in deploy phase. And we moved very, very quickly on. So that's kind of how it goes with these guys a little bit, right? Once again, strategic partners, and we talk with them more about strategy, less about like, typical things you would talk with a vendor about. And it just, kind of like crossed and intersected right at the perfect time. And Chris, you can probably talk a little bit more about like the long-term partnership with Narmi, and you've known these guys for a long, long time. And, kind of built that thing out, 8, 9, 10 years ago.
Well, that's a great point, Pete. Like they were sort of the catalyst for making this happen, or the enablement, right, Jim? The technology for us to be able to bring this to our clients. And I mentioned it earlier, but it's like going past, like you said earlier, just some like canned reports or tools that are like built into a platform, and now moving into the art of the possible, or like there's a little bit of learning here around what you're able to do with this MCP server. I go back to 6-7 years ago, and it was actually with a different technology partner, but we were trying to extend APIs out of our corporate banking system, and we thought it was going to be a home run, right? Like so many people are going to want to use this, and then you get into it and you realize, well, you need a dev shop to be able to connect this to certain ERP systems or a platform to make it useful. And the client type a customer needs to be of a certain size and the, complexity. And we never really found product market fit, right? And we were like, this is kind of interesting. And now you fast forward to today, where I think this technology really makes it much more accessible to smaller businesses, middle market companies in a place where they're already interacting, whether it be through Claude or ChatGPT eventually, like Pete will talk a little bit about maybe where our roadmap is going, but sort of this next iteration of it. And even the connectivity between our commercial banking platform powered by Narmi into Claude and making that happen. We are working on part of like why we're still in a beta phase is like, how do you make that easier for the small business to connect their account, their Grasshopper account into Claude. But I just think, it makes it so much more powerful than some canned reports. And this was just part of the roadmap with Narmi when Pete and I joined, and we're just two of the folks talking today. There's a whole team at Grasshopper that's helped put this together, but we reconnected with them in 2021, and it's just been part of a roadmap where we're constantly trying to say, we're trying to provide a really great banking experience for our customers. We've got a pretty decent digital acquisition engine, but now the pendulum swings a little bit. And you say to yourself, you built a fairly large portfolio. How do you drive a better value proposition, which in turn, drives more profitability for the bank? And this is just another tool or an engagement piece for us that we're excited about, but it's really early days, obviously, too.
So, Chris, you intentionally launched this as a read-only feature where Claude cannot initiate transactions like an agent. Can you discuss that decision, but also whether transaction capabilities might be added or what may be added from the standpoint of dialogue? As I mentioned with GPT, it asks you follow-up questions. Is that capability part of this future view of how the customer is going to be able to actually access their data in a new way through LLMs?
Pete, I'll take the start of this and then let you layer in some of your thoughts as it relates to the technology and the security. But Jim, at Grasshopper, we're big fans of taking the approach of sort of crawl, walk, jog, run. And I'd say, like, as we were getting this out the door.
But it's a short span between those things too.
We like to move fast. We like to.
Yeah,
I'm
sorry. We all have that pace, but it's, do I run in the 5th year or the 4th year? That doesn't get to the run until the pace is a little quicker. So that helps.
So maybe our pace can be a little bit quicker than others, but we like to get out the door when we feel comfortable with something, but like not bet the bank on it, so to speak. And so
Yep.
we wanted to get it out the door. I think everybody felt comfortable with this being a read-only technology. Let's learn from how our clients use it. The voice of customer is going to be really powerful over the next couple months or couple quarters. And to your question, like, what Pete and I sitting here right now is that we'd say, yes, definitely is on the roadmap to get to potentially more functionality, like a write functionality. And what we're talking about here is maybe you're making instructions to send a wire or ACH, moving money from this platform where you're not technically logged into an online or mobile banking app. You're
Right.
doing it where you live. So we do have that on the roadmap. In terms of when we're going to roll that out, sort of to be determined. But there's been a lot of thought internally, and Pete and his team lead this around how do we iterate and how fast do we move. So, Pete, I'll kick it over to you maybe to layer in some additional comments.
Yeah. So I think that the focus for right now is to get this in more clients' hands to get feedback, right? And so up to this point, the enrollment experience with this thing has been not simple, right? To be fully frank, you have to know a little bit of Python. You got to go edit a Claude config file. That's obviously not something you can deploy massively, right? But it's helped us get out kind of out there with a handful of different clients. So we're focusing on ease of enrollment first and foremost. We've got a OAuth enrollment flow that is going to be going live here shortly. In fact, we just put it into our production environment this morning. I was testing it right before, live testing it right before this call. So that will help, right? So instead of, having to go, edit a config file or something along those lines, you simply, it does SSO, right? Like, so it kind of logs you out there, opens up your grasshopper.bank, browser, and you kind of just authenticate. So that's helpful. So first and foremost, like ease of enrollment. The second thing is, we've got to get this thing extended to more LLMs. It's Claude only right now. So we went out and, we know the market numbers, right? Like, obviously you got ChatGPT and then you got Gemini and then maybe XAI and then some followers after that. But Claude's not, the top one or two for sure. And as we've gone out and we've talked to our clients and run a couple surveys, what we've seen is ChatGPT is number one, Gemini is number two, Claude is kind of like a distant number three in usage, amongst our small businesses, right? So we said, look, we got to deal with enrollment, make sure that's nice and simple. We've got to go extend this thing into other LLMs that, are the LLMs that our clients are using. So we should have ChatGPT available. Probably 30 days from now, it'll be available, right? So like once we get those two things kind of behind us, we feel like we can probably open this thing up. So those two things, once again, ease of enrollment and, access to a ChatGPT and then eventually Google. We can start to open this thing up beyond like just a private beta, which is what it's in right now. And we'll probably open up into something that's a little bit more public, and we'll actually start going and engaging with our clients directly saying, hey, look, this thing is available. We haven't done that, right? We just haven't done that up to this point. And so once we get that behind us, then we're going to get a ton of feedback, right? Like either this thing's great or, hey, you guys are a bunch of fintech geeks that don't know what you're talking about. And like no one uses this thing, right? Or something in between, right? Like we don't know, but we're going to try to like stand up some sort of like ecosystem for people to give feedback, for us to kind of, hear that feedback, maybe kind of like circulate some of that feedback more broadly amongst the community of clients that are using it, et cetera. Just once again, the same way we did our internal AI technology approach. So we're going to try to do all that in the next 30, 60 days, and then maybe eventually get to write access, which is going to be a little different.
What's interesting, it reminds me of the early days of Erica with Bank of America. Everybody said, really, is this really that big of a deal? And, as it evolved, they continually changed what the capabilities were, what was going to be able to be captured, what was able to be said, what was going to come out of the conversations, what the conversation meant. Because the technology and the mindset of the consumer has changed so dramatically certainly since COVID, but even before that, people are starting to understand the power. And I think you're in an interesting space right now because you have moving targets as well as moving propositions from the different LLMs. As I mentioned, ChatGPT all of a sudden starts to have follow-up questions, and Claude AI isn't there yet, but Claude AI, from my perspective, has some of the best writing skills, some of the best dialogue skills out there, while ChatGPT and Perplexity has another version of what they're best at. But I'm sure you're going to find customers that are going to gravitate to one platform or another. The learning process, the listening capabilities, interestingly, that I keep on saying that all these LLMs are great listeners, and you've got to structure your questions the right way. Well, you're going to be able to build that as you go. And it's one of those things that you don't really know where the landing zone is from just talking to you today. And that kind of makes it even more special in that, the evolution of this is going to go very fast. And once you get a couple moments where you go, oh man, they nailed something here that's very marketable right today. And again, from the very first conversations that both you guys had with me, you're looking at how this can be deployed as opposed to simply, it's just a new way to look at the exact same data the exact same way. And what value transfer happens. And I think that's really where we are today when we look at these LLMs and the capabilities that it really expands. But on the other hand, it puts a lot of pressure on both you and the rest of your teams to actually evolve as the potential of the LLMs evolve. Because it's not like you're dealing with something that's static. And they're not even like in the way they address issues. And it's not like I don't think you're getting a whole long lead time on what's going to happen next. You go, oh, look at some of this changed major with this platform. And I didn't know it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Jim, that's all very well said, right? And we see that as like the power of all of this, right? So you've got these giant corporations, Google, Anthropic, Microsoft, right? Like all of them that are battling it out, Meta, right? Like battling it out right now and pouring billions and billions into R&D to iteratively, improve their Gemini 2.0 to 2.5. And we get to be the benefactor of that, right? And so we're focusing on safely and securely in the right context, deploying out our structured data into those ecosystems so our clients can take advantage of the arms race that's happening right now, right? And you talked about like GPT, 4. I don't think GPT 3.5 actually had context, but 4 did. GPT-5 does, right? And like now my personal GPT-5 knows the last 2 years of my life. It knows everything about me pretty much, right?
And it happened actually without an announcement. It just happens.
Yes.
And you go, anybody who knows it, their eyes light up going, I have, and some of them, I'm sure it went a good couple of weeks before I realized, wait, this is actually asking very intelligently. It's not just prompting me with what I said in that conversation. It is saying, do you want us to use your red and black branding for this? You go like, holy crap. I don't remember actually saying that in any conversation, but they obviously picked up something here. Maybe they're watching my Amazon purchases. But, as you look at this, it really, your end game, it seems to me, and please correct me if I'm wrong or tell me that I'm right. It really empowers your clients to do more with what's in the marketplace today. You're almost like their learning lab for doing things that they would probably have gotten to, but you're actually making that link faster than Pete, than you were using before. I'm not making you pull down all these files from everywhere.
That's right. And Jim, I would say you know this, right? And your listeners know this, that there's something happening in the industry right now where you've got some banks who are saying, no, we're not going to enable connectivity out into the third-party ecosystem, into the fintech ecosystem. In fact, we're going to charge you or them to enable that, right? And so this has been something that's now been happening for a while where we would say, no, in fact, like we're going to take the exact opposite approach. It's not our data. It's the client's data. And if the client says to us, hey, Pete, hey, Chris, I want to securely take that data, my data, and kind of pull it into this ecosystem, we're going to say, okay, let's try to find a way to make that happen, right? And so we think like we're taking a completely separate approach, different approach than some of the big guys, are taking when it comes to access to client data. And we think that will win over the long run, right? Like we're not naive enough to think that we can go build like every mousetrap that our clients need to live a healthier financial life. We would much rather focus on like the things we're great at, which are, banking, managing risk, listening to our clients, et cetera. And we would rather go engage or build pipes out into the third party ecosystem, safe, secure pipes out into the third party ecosystem to allow our clients to do everything that they need to do. Right. So that like strategically, that is our approach to this thing. And we just see this as kind of like a new quote unquote battlefield kind of like on that front.
So as a last question, and it's funny because we are so used to saying the next 3 to 5 years, I'm going, no, that I can't even go in that direction. I don't know if I'll be here in 3 to 5 years. So in the evolution of this product, this move to what you've done here, how do you see this playing out? What's your thought on what can come from this? Do you see your business banking customers actually giving you access to data outside of your organization so that you can help them come up with even better answers that you couldn't get just with the limited data you have access to? It sounds to me that this is almost a trust enhancement feature that says, I'm going to give you your data back in a way you can use it with these new tools. How you use it is up to you, but we want to enable you in a way that makes it so that we're not the keeper of the keys. We're simply the doorman. We're making it so that we can leave that door open and be there when you need us.
I think I like what you said about enablement there, Jim, right? Like, I think that's how we look at this thing. And going back to where we started, where I answered your first question around like, how did we get to this point? And I talked about, hey, we're trying to leverage AI for internal efficiencies. I know our clients are going through that right now. They're going through that exact same journey, right? Their banking data is a critical component to that enablement, right? And so I would have loved it if like when we started going down this path, I had my core strategic vendors kind of like open up access via an MCP to all of that data to me. It would have been way more powerful. And so we see this really as enablement, right? And like who knows where it's going to go, right? But I would think that, you've got the ability for a CFO to stop spending hours on end, prepping for investor relations or board calls or whatever, right? And they've got some template in Claude or ChatGPT that simply sucks in this data and does it for them, right? And makes them, allows them to stop focusing on that and start focusing on something that's a little bit more important. But anyways, that's how I would
definitely
look
become
at it.
an employee of the business and help them do their business better. Again, I got a whole lot of problems with, the great looking tools that you can get on your mobile platform or your online platform or what this all means. It's a whole different play when you're starting working with LLMs and the applicability of being able to build what you want as a business from scratch, but with your bank as a partner. Chris, how do you see this playing out? What's your vision of what could truly happen here?
Yeah, and I think my thoughts are akin to what Pete was saying. As a 1.5 or $2 billion digital bank focused on serving SMBs in the middle market, certainly our approach is maybe a little bit different than the $1 trillion banks thinking about open banking and data sharing, especially with their consumers. Our approach has been, or our approach is sort of what Pete said, is like we want to be a conduit or a tool to allowing small businesses to flourish and spend less time, I don't know, in their bank account trying to figure out what the hell's going on inside their operations, and more time running their company. And so I think this is the start of that. AI is changing the way all of us sort of interact, both in our personal lives and the way we work. And so this is us finding a way to participate in that. We are in the very early innings.
Yeah.
Where it goes, Jim, I don't know. There's like a bold prediction, like predictions that you were asking us to make in like October of 2025. But I mean, I do think it could be the start of, I don't know, like less involvement with your bank, maybe inside of the traditional commercial digital banking platform, and more just access to your data using tools that they use today for managing other parts of their business. And it just starts to embed in their lives. Sort of how we've built an embedded finance platform that's very complicated with some large fintechs. We didn't even talk about that here today. That's like a whole separate business. This is like bringing some of that concept or that applicability to smaller businesses that say, I'm not trying to stand up running a consumer checking account platform. I'm not trying to be a bank, but I'm trying to get at my data a little bit better to help me maybe make better business decisions, acquisition decisions, help the bank understand my needs for getting access to capital and grow. So I think there's like a lot of ways that, as Pete was saying, we don't know yet, but as we start to listen to how our customers use it and even bring some more external data into like the Grasshopper operation, it's going to help us get a lot smarter in serving our clients.
Well, and at the end of the day, I'm going to have Leah make sure that in the next couple of days, she sets up a meeting with us 6 months from now, because I think that the reality, the real excitement here is what your customers are going to be doing with the tools you're providing them, and how you're going to make it so that you feed those experiences back to your customers. So it becomes a massive sandbox where your customers are doing a lot of the innovation on your behalf with the tools you provide them, and that you're going to feed this back to other customers saying, this person used this for payroll, this person used it for cash flow management, for loan operations, and that you integrate some of that within your organization, saying, we're going to provide you. That's where the answers start coming, where, by the way, based on what you've been working on, it looks like you could use this. And all of a sudden you have you're well on the way to what we kind of envision agentic AI without the risk, where you're doing it based on what the customer is doing and having them provide the final answer as to what they want to do. But again, that's the ultimate, benefit down the road, I think. So exciting to talk to you, gentlemen. It took a while getting us together. You guys have been on all kinds of podcasts and meetings and write-ups on American Banker and everywhere else. I'm excited to see what happens. But I think as I looked at both your backgrounds, it kind of was the culmination of what you would think would come together, where you're saying, you know what, I've been here, done this, never been pleased with the outcome from the customer standpoint. You've kind of flipped the table. So